Hey everyone, just want to make a quick video about what's happening right now, what is happening next, and some things you should be looking out for. First things first, we have to talk about the Fed. Yesterday they came out with their 75 basis point rate hike, which is exactly what everyone expected. There were some people arguing that it might be as low as 50, wasn't gonna happen, and some people that were saying it could be 100 or 125, some advocating for 150 basis points. Well, we know why they did that, because even yesterday Jerome Powell came out and said that their target is to get the Fed funds rate to at least 4.5. Well, what that means is 4.5 to 4.75. Now they're trying to be nice and play it calm by saying, oh, 4.6 to 4.7. Basically, they're gonna be at 4.5 at some time in the next 6 months. The reason they're doing this is because they're trying to fight inflation with everything they got, and they even said they're not gonna quit until they've accomplished the job. Well, what that means for us is that things that are attached to the Fed funds rate are gonna become more expensive, but things associated to the sentiment of the Fed will also become more expensive. So the things directly affected by the Fed funds rate are gonna be things like short-term loans, car loans, credit cards, personal lines of credit. Immediately, those become more expensive. Things that are associated with the Fed sentiment, things like mortgage-backed securities, bond yields, and all those rates of returns, those will also be affected by the Fed's decision. What you're already seeing is that bond yields are going higher, mortgage rates are going higher, and the markets are already reacting to everything that they said yesterday beyond the rate hike itself. One of the problems as I see it is that we're still not even done yet. We're right now at 3.25% Fed funds rate, and they're saying they want to go to 4.5, which means that they think they have to at least get to there before we actually tamp down inflation and bring it to the 2% target that they're hoping to reach. The problem with that is that we're currently at 8.3% year-over-year inflation, and to get to 2%, we're going to have to see an even greater rate of deceleration of inflation in order to get to 2% in any reasonable time. Now, during the press conference yesterday, Jerome Powell said this, and he may have not intended to say it, but I caught it. It was this. He said that they're going to see inflation continue into the next year and the year after that, and the year after that,
and the year after that,
and the year after that, before we actually get close to our target of 2%. I'm sorry, next year is 2023, and the year after that is 2024. So what that means for us directly is something called demand destruction. This is exactly what they're trying to do. Demand destruction is when you make it so painful for people to continue buying goods and services at the price that they're paying that you completely kill the demand that's bringing money for those products and services. Essentially trying to tamp down how many dollars are chasing the goods and services in the marketplace. Now, arguably, that is one of the main objectives of the Fed, is to cool down demand. I mean, one way to cool down demand is to just let elevated prices continue in perpetuity, but that then creates an affordability problem across a bunch of sectors of industry and our financial markets. That by default does kill demand, but it means that people actually can't afford the things that they need to be buying for themselves. So that's their stated goal. That's what they're going with. We have future Fed rate hikes coming up soon, and that's going to mean more pain in the markets. Let's talk about what's coming next. As a result of this, you're gonna see unemployment numbers go up. You're like, whoa, how could that happen? Well, because you have to have unemployment going up as a construct of the cost of businesses running gets higher. Companies can save their bottom line by laying people off. And that's what we're gonna see. Unfortunately, tightening Fed and increasing rates causes layoffs. They go hand in hand in any market cycle this has happened in before. Right now, unemployment is like in the 3s. We're gonna need to at least see unemployment in the 4, maybe even 5 to 6% before we actually start to see some of the cause and effect that they wanna have happen. Now, that may seem like a small percentage change, but that means millions of jobs. And there are hints that this is already happening. I mean, the labor participation rate is lower than it was just a few years ago, lower than it was 12 months ago, lower than it was 6 months ago, and you have the JOLTS, the Job Opening and Labor Turnover Survey, which continues to be above 11 million open jobs month after month after month. There was one month it went under 11, but it came right back over 11 million jobs right after that. Therefore, you see the labor participation rate down for one of two reasons. Either people aren't going to work, or companies are not hiring. And in some instances, it's both. We are seeing layoffs already happen, and people are starting to kind of slow walk the general population to this idea that there's going to be massive unemployment. You're already starting to see banks laying off people, you're seeing the tech industry lay off people, and you're seeing retail make massive layoffs already. So what this means is that we are in for a consumer slowdown. I'm gonna cite 3 names that you already know: FedEx, Walmart, and Ford, and these are key indicators of really big companies, international companies, that are giving us some hints of what we should expect in the consumer spending side of things. First of all, FedEx missed their Q1 earnings by quite a bit, and then they issued forward guidance saying they're canceling all their annual guidance that they had just been raving about 60 days ago at the end of June. Because they're so connected to global economy, factories, orders, and a variety of businesses, business to business, and business to consumer business, this is kind of like a canary in the coal mine. Because if it's happening at FedEx, that means it's also happening at UPS, it's also happening at DHL, and then locally here in the States, that means it's happening at the USPS. All of that is a reflection to the clients that they serve, which are businesses that are sending products and goods from the place it's made to the place it's going. And if there's a slowdown in that, that means it's a slowdown in all of the sectors that are their clients, not just at their company, which flies planes, drives trucks, and delivers packages. Next, we gotta talk about Walmart. Walmart and retailers are already canceling billions of dollars of factory orders. They're doing this because they're expecting that consumers will have to take their hard-earned money and use it only for their necessities, and they will not have any money left for the peripheral spending. Things like electronics and other, let's say, more expensive goods that people can do without because they need to buy food and they need necessities of daily living, not necessarily the things that we wish we could have and actually don't really need. As the cost of goods that hit the shelf continue to maintain high, and remember, if we're going to experience this into next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that,
and the year after that,
and the year after that, these stores already know what they're going to be able to sell and what they won't, which means that they can now cancel orders for Q4, Q1 of 2023, Q2 of 2023, because they already know what they should expect from a sales volume perspective, which is a direct correlation to consumers' ability to spend. And lastly, we gotta talk about Ford. This week, Ford informed their shareholders that they have $1 billion of unexpected expense in Q3. That's a lot of money. Yes, even for a company as big as Ford, $1 billion is still a lot of money. And the fact that they're issuing this guidance to their shareholders means that things may not look as good as they once thought because of the direct correlation to the expense it is to keep that business running. So the cost of raw goods and materials, fuel expenses to get those things to the factories, factory expenses, labor expenses, and maybe a slowing consumer down the line once these cars and trucks actually get to the lot are a forward guidance and tip us off to what we should expect in the next year or two. All right, quick pivot. Let's talk about what to watch for. First, you have to watch the Fed funds rate. We're at 3.25 today. They're gonna go to 4.5. They could go higher than that if inflation doesn't actually slow down, but they are targeting that. I'm gonna tell you why right now. Again, yesterday, Jerome Powell kind of let us in on a little bit of a secret, not so much of a secret, but he did say that they are essentially using the PCE as their barometer for where they need the Fed funds rate to get to. Now, the PCE number has been hovering around 4.5%, 4.6, 4.7% for a while now, and if they bring the Fed funds rate up to 4.5, then that will actually help quell some of the inflation problems that they are combating right now. Now, that may not ultimately do it until that PCE number comes below that 4.5% Fed funds rate, but that at least is their target. Watch the Fed funds rate. Number 2, watch the rate of inflation change, not just month over month, but year over year. It's important to see the speed at which inflation is slowing rather than just what the total number is. Yes, I know that it was 9.1% 2 months ago, then it was 8.6, and now it's 8.3. However, that rate of change is more important than the number itself. That indicates to the Fed and to the broader economy how quickly we're getting to their stated goal of 2%. And this is affecting things like bond yields. I also watched the 10-year and the 2-year yields. Right now, these are inverted, which means the short term is higher percentage rate than the long term. Now, this becomes a problem because if I'm lending out money at a short-term rate at higher than the long-term rate, not only is that more appetizing for investors than for money to flow into that bucket and basket, but it also means that I cannot be issuing loans at a higher, longer rate term than I am borrowing it at a shorter rate term. What we need to have happen is we need the 10-year yield to be higher than the 2-year yield so that I can borrow money short-term to lend it out long-term. Right now, we have the inversion of that, which is it's higher to borrow short-term than it is to lend long-term. Also, we need to be listening for in-between the lines kind of stuff. I've already referenced it in this video when Jerome Powell was saying that next year and the year after that. Well, that's like in between comments and things he's saying, he kind of sneaks in this, into next year and the year after that. And then we're gonna continue to, I'm like, whoa, I heard that. I heard what you said. So what you mean is 2023 and 2024. So that means we're not getting out of this anytime soon. I think I've given you plenty of evidence of that. However, when they come out and say that in between making main comments, that means that's something they already know, and it may not have been in his notes. You also need to keep your eyes open for home price declines. Before you freak out, I did not say crash, I said declines. There's already an argument to be made that the market needs to make a little bit of a correction because it's just been so darn hot for the last 2 years. A lot of that has to do with the cheap cost of borrowing money on a 30-year loan. I mean, loans at 2.25%, 2.5% for a 30-year fix, that was fantastic. And you saw back-to-back years which set mortgage records for total number of dollars originated in the mortgage space. Most of these people that have low loans are going to keep those loans, and people that have to sell their house because of circumstance, they're moving out of town or coming to town, or they got to change a job or a change of a life scenario that requires them to physically move out of the space they're at now, that's going to be the cause for future sales. And it's not going to be just because I feel like moving today and money's cheap. Now, for the people that are still trying to buy their dream home right now, well, that money's coming at a much higher cost than it was just 6 months ago, 12 months ago. So if rates were 3% at the beginning of the year and they're 6% now, that's a huge representative change in the monthly payment just in a couple of months. That means that there's less people that can afford the current house price at the same price of borrowing the money that we have today versus just a few months ago. The only way to fix that is for the rates to come down so the money's cheaper to keep that price, or for the price to come down a little bit so the person can still afford the monthly payment at the new interest rate. Now, sellers don't have to sell their house, but the sellers that have a lot of equity that need to move because of a reason or a circumstance, or just choose to move because they want to get all that cash out of their house and they're going to retire or whatever they're doing, there's still going to be sales because of that. And then you're going to have sellers cross-competing with each other for the same buyer. If the buyer pool is smaller than the seller pool, then there's going to be less buyers chasing all these different listings. And then you're going to be in a situation where the people listing the homes are going to have to figure out, well, gosh, do I just drop my price by 1% or 2% or 3%, 4% in order to get this sale? Because that same buyer who is in the market and can't afford it at this price is going to maybe go look at the other one or the other one or the other one. So that psyche and that mentality is going to change seller behavior. And of course, higher mortgage rates. I mean, we're already having that problem right now. And I say it's a problem because it is literally curbing people's appetite to buy in the real estate market. But for people who could afford 6 or 10 months ago, they can't afford right now. There's a huge swath of the population that was looking at homes back in January, February, March. And then when the Fed started doing rate hikes and then the mortgage-backed security market started following suit, the cost of borrowing money has just become more exorbitant than it was just at the beginning of this year. That means that buyer purchasing power has really been squeezed, and there's even less buyers now, and mortgage rates are going to continue to go higher until they can't go any higher anymore. Now, there will be a time in the future where mortgage rates have to chill out and they have to kind of come back down again, but a lot of stuff fundamentally has to be fixed before we can get into that situation. So if you have questions and you want to talk about any of the things I mentioned in this video, or maybe you're seeing something that I didn't discuss in this video, shoot me a DM. Let's have a chat. I want to see what you think about all this. And of course, I'm trying to just give as much information as possible, as concise as possible, so you know what's going on now, what's coming up next, and what you should be looking for. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you next time.